My parents kicked me out at 15 so my sister could have her own room. 7 months later, they're begging for forgiveness, but they don't deserve it. When I was 15, my parents kicked me out so my older sister could have her own bedroom. When I asked them where I should go, Mom grinned. Figure out that was 7 months ago today. They're both begging for forgiveness. My dad is black, and my mom is white. I look really black, while my older sister, Kate, looks more white. This one feature has affected my entire life. You see, despite my dad being black, he has extreme colorism against black people. While my mom is just straight up racist to her, my dad is. The only exception, me and Kate are only 2 years apart, but growing up our experiences were very different. Every birthday of hers was celebrated not only with a cake, but also huge birthday blowouts every day for her entire birth week. Meanwhile, my birthday was just another day in a year. However, instead of soaking up all the attention and hating me as much as our parents did, Kate would always be kind to me when they weren't looking. On my 9th birthday, Kate knew our parents wouldn't do anything for me, so she asked them if she could celebrate her birthday on my day. Of course, they said yes, and when the day came, she let me choose who to invite. When it was time for the cake, Kate distracted my parents and brought them into another room so everyone could sing happy birthday for me. It was one of the happiest days of my life. Another time, when we got our report cards, and she got all C's while I got B's, she knew my parents would likely wail on me for not getting A's, so while they were reading my report card, she begged them not to hurt me because she didn't like violence. So they ended up just pinching me a few times. So even though my parents basically saw me as a cotton picker, as they call me, I still felt lucky because Kate was always there until one day when she turned her back on me. It was her 17th birthday. I woke up to the sound of not just my mom, not just my dad, but my entire family throwing all my belongings into boxes. Your sister said all she wants for her birthday is her own room. Sorry is the first thing my dad said when I asked what was going on. My eyes widened, and I asked him where I was supposed to go because there were no other rooms in the house. My mom chimed in, I don't know your phone numbers of friends and family. Figure out, darky. Tears filled my eyes, and I looked over at Kate, who refused to make eye contact with me. Her entire body was tense. It took almost half an hour of convincing before I finally believed it wasn't some weird prank. I immediately started to howl with a deep sadness because the one thing I was holding on to, one ally I had in the house, had abandoned me. And even as I curled into a ball and started to rock back and forth with a loneliness that I can't describe with words, they ignored me, just kept packing. By this point, my flight or fight kicked, and I numbed my emotions before walking out and calling the only other family member I trusted, my aunt on my dad's side. After Kate's betrayal, I had no idea what she'd say, but she immediately said I could come over and stay for as long as I needed. I didn't eat breakfast that morning, didn't even give Kate her gift, just took the boxes, ordered an Uber, and left. But on the way there, Kate called me. I was filled with hate as I saw her name pop up on the screen, but picked up anyway. I'm so sorry. Please don't hate me. My eyebrows furrowed, and I went completely silent. Are you alone right now? She asked. I told her yes. Kate didn't say anything else. She just turned on FaceTime and showed me a pregnancy test with 2 pink lines. It was hers. I gasped, Lily, I'm pregnant. I don't want to tell Mom and Dad yet, because, well, you know how they can be, but I don't want you to be home when they find out. I thought back to the time when Kate came home with a hickey. My parents shouted at me for almost an hour, telling me how bad of an influence I was, how it was all my fault. So I understood. Kate, what can I do to help? I asked. She told me to ask for her help from our Aunt Bonnie. Suddenly, I could hear my parents walking up the stairs singing happy birthday, so I hung up. My mind was spinning. A part of me was relieved that Kate was still my best friend, but mostly I was just worried, very worried. And when I got to my Aunt Bonnie's, my stomach twisted into a pretzel knot because she opened the door, gave me a huge smile, and hugged me super tight. I'm so happy you visited. I never told her what had happened, and clearly my parents didn't either. We were in the middle of polite introductory small talk when I just blurted out my parents are racist, and my sister is pregnant. The second I said it, she laughed, thinking it was some sort of joke, and that's when I started bawling my eyes out. By this point, we'd already taken the boxes. So we went inside, and she listened while I talked. I made her promise not to tell my parents, and she swore she wouldn't. Next hour consisted of me completely unloading everything. The racism, the favoritism, getting kicked out. She promised I would be safe with her and held me while I cried myself to sleep. I didn't know at the time, but Aunt Bonnie was about to make my parents pay me, and Kate's lives were about to change forever. When I woke up the next morning on Aunt Bonnie's couch, I had that brief moment of confusion where I didn't know where I was, and it all came rushing back. Getting kicked out, Kate's pregnancy, everything. My eyes felt swollen from crying, and my back hurt from sleeping in a weird position. I checked my phone, 3 missed calls from Kate, but nothing from my parents. Not surprising, but it still stung. I could hear Aunt Bonnie in the kitchen making breakfast. The smell of bacon and eggs filled the apartment. My stomach growled loudly. I hadn't eaten since lunch the day before. Good morning, sleepyhead, Aunt Bonnie said. When I shuffled into the kitchen, she looked like she'd been up for hours already. I made you some breakfast. Eat up. We've got a lot to talk about. I sat down at her small kitchen table and started eating. The food was amazing, or maybe I was just starving. Either way, I practically inhaled it while Aunt Bonnie sat across from me sipping her coffee. I've been thinking about everything you told me, she said after I'd eaten about half my plate, and I need to ask you something important. Has your dad ever hit you? I almost choked on my orange juice. Nobody had ever asked me that directly before. Not like punch me or anything. I mumbled just some slaps, pinches, that kind of stuff. Aunt Bonnie's face darkened. That still abuse, Lily. And the emotional stuff, the way they treat you differently from Kate. That's abuse too. I just stared at my plate. When someone actually says it out loud like that, it hits different. I'd always known something was wrong with how my parents treated me. But hearing someone call abuse made me feel both validated and weirdly ashamed. I'm calling your parents after breakfast. She continued, first to tell them you're staying with me for now, second to let them know I'm aware of how they've been treating you. My heart started racing. But what about Kate? If you tell them you know everything, they'll realize I told you about the pregnancy. I won't mention the pregnancy, Aunt Bonnie assured me. That's Kate's news to share when she's ready. But the rest, they need to hear it after breakfast. I called Kate back. While Aunt Bonnie cleaned up, Kate answered immediately, sounding stressed out of her mind. Are you okay? Where you did Aunt Bonnie let you stay? The questions came rapid fire. I told her I was fine. And staying at Aunt Bonnie's place, she sounded relieved, but still anxious. I asked how she was doing, and if our parents suspected anything. They don't suspect a thing, Kate said. They're too busy redecorating my room now. That it's all mine. She sounded guilty saying it. Lily, I'm so sorry. I should have found another way. I wasn't completely over being hurt, but I understood why she did. It's okay, I said. But Kate, what's your plan? You can't hide a pregnancy forever. Kate started crying softly. I don't know. I'm scared telling you know how they'll react. I knew exactly how they'd react. They'd blame me somehow, even though I had nothing to do with it. They'd shame Kate, but ultimately forgive her. They'd make everything worse. What about the father? I asked. Is he in the picture? It's Tyler, Kate said. You know, from my chemistry class, his parents are super religious. If they find out he's screwed, we both are. Tyler Williams. I knew him. Vaguely tall, quiet guy who played baseball. Not someone I would have expected Kate to date secretly. Have you thought about what you want to do? I asked carefully, like, do you want to keep it, or I don't know yet? Kate admitted, I need time to figure out. Can you ask Aunt Bonnie if she'll help me? Maybe I can come over and we can talk. I promised to ask Aunt Bonnie and told Kate to hang tight. Right after we hung up, I heard Aunt Bonnie on the phone. In the living room, her voice was raised, and even though I couldn't make out every word, I could tell she was laying to some of my parents. Probably I sat on the edge of the bed in Aunt Bonnie's spare room, where she'd moved my boxes. Part of me wanted to eavesdrop, but another part was scared to hear what she was saying. After what felt like forever, the apartment went quiet. A minute later, Aunt Bonnie appeared in the doorway. Well, I just had a nice chat with your father, she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. He claims they didn't kick you out, just suggested you might want to stay with friends for a while. I snorted. Yeah, right, they literally packed all my stuff. I know, Aunt Bonnie said, sitting down next to me. Your dad's always been good at rewriting history, but I made it clear you're staying with me for now, and we'll be having a family meeting soon to discuss how they've been treating you. My stomach dropped. A family meeting with them. Do we have to eventually? Yes, she said, but not right away. First, I want to get you settled here, and I get the feeling there's something you want to ask me. I nodded. Kate wants to know if she can come over to talk to you about, you know, her situation. Aunt Bonnie smiled, of course. She can tell her to come over tomorrow after school. I'll make sure you're home early from work. The rest of that day was weird, but nice. Aunt Bonnie helped me unpack my stuff in her spare room. It was small, but way nicer than sharing with Kate. I had my own desk, a queen-size bed, and actual privacy. Aunt Bonnie even took me shopping for some decorations to make the room feel more like mine. While we were out, I kept checking my phone. No messages from my parents, not even "Are you okay?" or "We miss you." Just silence. Kate texted that she'd come over tomorrow around 4:00 p.m. to talk to Aunt Bonnie. That night, Aunt Bonnie ordered pizza, and we watched movies on her couch. It felt so normal, like what I imagined other families did regularly. No walking on eggshells, no feeling like a burden, just for existing, just relaxing and enjoying each other's company. You know, Aunt Bonnie said during a quiet moment, I always wanted kids of my own. Never worked out that way, but having you here, it's nice. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just smiled and focused on the movie. But something warm settled in my chest for the first time in ages. I fell asleep feeling safe. The next day was a Tuesday. Aunt Bonnie had to work, but she left me a key and said to make myself at home. I spent the morning exploring her apartment and the afternoon doing some homework I brought with me. At 3:30, I started getting anxious about Kate's visit. Kate showed up right at 4:00 looking nervous, but relieved to see me. We hugged for a long time in the doorway before I pulled her inside. This place is nice, she said, looking around. Aunt Bonnie's not home yet. She should be here any minute. I said, want some water or something? Kate nodded and followed me to the kitchen. She looked pale and tired, like she hadn't slept well. We sat at the kitchen table in awkward silence for a few minutes before she spoke. Mom and Dad think I met debate team practice. She said they don't suspect anything yet, but Mom made a comment about me gaining weight this morning. I almost had a panic attack. Before I could respond, we heard keys in the door. Aunt Bonnie walked in, still in her work clothes, carrying a bag of groceries. Her face lit up when she saw Kate. There's my other niece, she said warmly, setting down the groceries to give Kate a H. Kate burst into tears the moment Aunt Bonnie's arms went around her. The next hour was intense. Kate told Aunt Bonnie everything about Tyler, about being 8 weeks pregnant, about being terrified of our parents finding out. Aunt Bonnie listened carefully, asking questions, but never judging. Have you decided what you want to do? Aunt Bonnie asked gently. Kate shook her head. I don't know. I'm only 16. I'm supposed to go to college next year, but I also don't know if I could go through an abortion. She started crying again. An adoption. I don't know. You have options, Aunt Bonnie said, in time to decide, but first you need to see a doctor, make sure everything's okay. I can take you if you want. Kate nodded gratefully. Could you? I'm scared to go alone, and I can't ask Mom, of course, Aunt Bonnie said. And Kate, whatever you decide, I'll support you, even if your parents don't. Kate looked at me, then her eyes still wet with tears. I'm so sorry about what happened, Lily. I just panicked. I thought if they found out while you were still there, it's okay. I said, meaning at this time, I get it, and honestly, it's better here anyway. After Kate left promising texts us about setting up a doctor's appointment, I helped Aunt Bonnie make dinner. My mind was spinning with everything that was happening: Kate's pregnancy, my new living situation, the inevitable confrontation with my parents that Aunt Bonnie was planning. Aunt Bonnie, I said as we chopped vegetables, what's going to happen when my parents find out about Kate? She sighed, I don't know, honey, but we'll face it together, all three of us, the next week. Was surprisingly peaceful. I settled into a routine at Aunt Bonnie's place. She'd wake me up for school, drop me off on her way to work, and pick me up afterward. We'd make dinner together, watch TV, and talk. She asked me questions about my interests, my friends, my classes, all the normal stuff parents are supposed to care about, but mine never did. Kate came over a few times after school, supposedly for debate team research. Aunt Bonnie took her to a doctor's appointment, confirming she was indeed about 9 weeks pregnant. Kate was still undecided about what to do, but at least now she was getting proper prenatal care. In the meantime, my parents' radio silence, not a single call or text. Asking how I was, Kate said they barely mentioned me at home, like I just ceased to exist. It hurt, but also confirmed what I'd always suspected: they didn't really love me the way parents are supposed to love their kids. And on Friday evening, everything blew up. Kate called me in a panic. Mom found my prenatal vitamins. She said, her voice shaking. She put it together with me gaining weight. She knows, Lily, she knows I'm pregnant. My heart sank. What happened? What did she say? She went ballistic. Kate Sobs started screaming about how I'd ruined my life, how no decent college would accept me now, how I brought shame on the family. Dad came home in the middle of it and lost his mind too. I put Kate on speaker so Aunt Bonnie could hear. Are you safe? Aunt Bonnie asked immediately. I'm in my room with the door locked. Kate said, but they keep pounding on the door, demanding I come out and face the consequences of my actions. I'm scared. Aunt Bonnie grabbed her car. Keys, we're coming to get you. Pack a bag with essentials. You can stay here too. The drive to my parent house was tense. Aunt Bonnie drove like a woman on a mission, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. I sat in the passenger seat, texting Kate updates on our location. She wasn't responding anymore, which made my anxiety spike. When we pulled up the house, I felt sick to my stomach. I hadn't been back since the day they kicked me out. The porch light was on in both my parents' cars. When the driveway, stay in the car, Aunt Bonnie instructed as she put the car in park. No way. I protested. Kate's my sister. I'm coming with you. Aunt Bonnie looked like she wanted to argue, but nodded. Instead, we walked up to the front door together, and she rang the doorbell. The sound of shouting from inside immediately stopped. A moment later, my dad yanked the door open. His expression changed rapidly from anger to surprise to a forced smile when he saw Aunt Bonnie. Bonnie was surprised. He said, completely ignoring my existence beside her, what brings you by so late? Cut the crap, Marcus. Aunt Bonnie said coldly. We're here for Kate. She called us. My mom appeared behind him, her face blotchy from crying or yelling, or both. This is a family matter, Bonnie. You shouldn't be involved. I'm family. Aunt Bonnie shot back. And so is Lily, though you seem to have forgotten that. Where's Kate in her room, having a teenage tantrum? My dad said dismissively, she can come out when she's ready to discuss her options. Rationally, the way he said options made my skin crawl. I knew exactly what option he thought was rational. Let me go get her, I said, already moving toward the stairs. My mom tried to block my path. You don't live here anymore, Lily. You can't just move. Aunt Bonnie said, her voice so authoritative that my mom actually stepped aside. I ran upstairs to Kate's room, my old room too, and knocked gently. Kate, as me opened up the door, cracked open, and Kate peeked out, her face streaked with tears. When she saw it was really me, she flung the door open and hugged me tight. Thank God you're here, she whispered. They've lost their minds. Dad says I have to get an abortion or he'll throw me out. Mom keeps crying about what people at church will say. Pack your stuff. I told her, you're coming to stay with me and Aunt Bonnie. Kate nodded and quickly grabbed a duffel bag, shoving clothes and toiletries inside. I helped her pack, grabbing things. She missed her laptop charger, her favorite sweater, the stuff Bear she'd given me years ago that had somehow survived the purge of my belongings. When we came back downstairs with her bag, my parents were still arguing with Aunt Bonnie in the entryway. You can't just take her. My mom was saying, she's 16, she's still a minor. Watch me. Aunt Bonnie replied, unless you want to call Child Protective Services and report how you've treated both your daughters, I suggest you step aside. My dad's face turned an alarming shade of red. Is that a threat? You have no proof of anything. I have Lily's testimony, Aunt Bonnie said calmly, and now I have evidence of you trying to force Kate into a medical procedure against her. Do you really want to test me on this, Marcus? My parent exchanged a look. For the first time in my life, I saw something like fear in their eyes. Kate can make her own decisions when she turns 18, my mom said, changing tactics. For now, she stays here, where we can take care of her, like you took care of me, I blurted out, by treating her like garbage. If she doesn't do exactly what you want, my dad finally acknowledged my presence. With a glare, you don't know what you're talking about. We've always provided for both of you, providing food and shelter is the bare minimum. I shot back, you never loved me, and now that Kate's done something you don't approve of, you're treating her the same way. Kate stepped forward, clutching her bag. I'm going with Aunt Bonnie. And Lily, I'll be back when you're ready to support me no matter what I decide about my baby. My mom started crying again, but it felt manipulative rather than genuine. Kate, please think about your future. I am thinking about my future, Kate said firmly, and right now it's not. Here, We walked out of the house together, my parents too shocked to physically stop us. As we drove away, I looked back to see them standing in the doorway watching us go. They looked small and pathetic, somehow no longer the towering figures of authority they'd been in my mind for so long. The next few days were adjustment. Kate took my bed, while I slept on a pull-out couch. Aunt Bonnie's small apartment felt crowded with 3 people, but also warm and safe in a way our parents' house never had. My parents called Kate's phone constantly for the first 2 days, alternating between threats and tearful pleas for her to come home. She eventually turned off her phone to get some peace. They didn't call me once. On the 3rd day, I was alone in the apartment. While Aunt Bonnie was at work and Kate was at her follow-up doctor's appointment, the doorbell rang. And when I looked through the peephole, I nearly had a heart attack. My parents were standing there. I called Aunt Bonnie immediately. "They're here," I whispered into the phone. "Mom and Dad are at the door. Don't let them in." She said firmly, "I'm leaving work now. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The doorbell rang again, followed by pounding. "Lily, we know you're in there." My dad shouted, "Open this door right now." I stayed quiet, hoping they'd give up and leave. They didn't. After a few minutes, I heard a key in a lock. The door swung open, revealing my parents. My dad was holding a key. Aunt Bonnie gave us a spare key once when she went on vacation. He explained, his voice calmer now, in case of an emergency with her plans. "And Mail, I backed away from them. This is an emergency. You need to leave." My mom stepped inside, looking around the apartment. "Where's Kate? We need to talk to her." "She's not here," I said truthfully. "And I already called Aunt Bonnie. She's on her way home." My dad sighed heavily. "Lily, this has gone far enough. You've made your point. But Kate needs to come home now. She's still a minor. And what Bonnie's doing could be considered kidnapping. She didn't kidnap anyone. I snapped. "Kate chose to leave because you were forcing her to get an abortion." "We weren't forcing her," my mom said, though her eyes slid away from mine. "We were just trying to help her see the right choice according to who you." I was furious. Now it's her body, her baby, her choice. My dad took a step toward me, and I instinctively stepped back. Something flashed and his eyes hurt. Maybe that I was afraid of him. "Good. You should feel bad. This isn't about you," Lily said. "You always make everything about yourself." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you serious right now? You kicked me out of the house for Kate's birthday. You've treated me like I'm nothing my entire life, and now you have the nerve to say I make everything about myself." Before they could respond, the apartment door flew open again. Aunt Bonnie stood there looking furious. Behind her was Kate, her face pale with shock at seeing our parents get out of my apartment. Aunt Bonnie said to my parents, her voice deadly calm, "Not without Kate." My dad replied, turning to look at my sister. "Come on, Kate. This has gone on long enough. Come home where you belong." Kate moved to stand beside me. "And Aunt Bonnie, I'm not going anywhere with you, not until you accept that this is my decision to make." My mom started crying again. "Kate, please, we just want what's best for you. No, you want what's easiest for you." Kate shot back, "What's best for your reputation. You don't care about what I want or need." "That's not true," my dad protested. "We love you like you love Lily." Kate asked pointedly. That shut them up. They looked at me, then at each other, clearly not knowing how to respond. Aunt Bonnie stepped forward. "I think it's time we all had that family meeting I mentioned. Sit down, both of you." She gestured to the couch. Surprisingly, my parents sat. Maybe they were shocked by Aunt Bonnie's authority, or maybe they finally realized the seriousness of the situation. Either way, for the next 2 hours, we talked. Kate explained how terrified she was when she found out she was pregnant, how she knew our parents would react badly. I told them how their treatment had affected me all my life. The birthdays, the report cards, a constant feeling of being less than. Aunt Bonnie shared her perspective as an outsider who had watched their behavior for years without saying anything, something she now regretted. My parents mostly listened, occasionally trying to defend themselves, but getting shut down quickly. By the end, my mom was crying for real, not the manipulative tears from before. My dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in one afternoon. "I didn't realize," he said finally, his voice rough. "I didn't see what we were doing, Bull." Aunt Bonnie said flatly, "You saw, you just didn't care. The question is whether you care now." My mom looked at me through her tears. "Lily, I'm so sorry. We've been terrible parents to you." It was the first genuine apology I'd ever heard from her. I didn't know what to do with it. Part of me wanted to accept it immediately, to have the loving parents I'd always wanted. Another part wanted to tell them to go to hell. "Sorry doesn't fix 16 years," I said eventually. But as a start, the conversation shifted to Kate and her pregnancy. Our parents were still clearly unhappy about it, but they stopped pushing for an abortion. Instead, they actually listened as Kate talked about her options, keeping the baby, adoption, or termination, and her fears about each choice. By the time they left, nothing was resolved, but something had shifted. They promised to respect whatever decision Kate made about her pregnancy. They invited both of us to come home, but also said they understood if we wanted to stay with Aunt Bonnie for now. As Aunt Bonnie closed the door behind them, the 3 of us collapsed onto the couch, emotionally exhausted. "Do you think they meant it?" Kate asked quietly about supporting my decision. "I don't know." Aunt Bonnie said, "Honestly, people don't change overnight, but they might be starting to see the damage they've done." I wasn't convinced one conversation, no matter how intense, couldn't undo a lifetime of behavior. But for the first time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, things could be different that night. As I lay on the pull-out couch staring at the ceiling, I thought about everything that had happened in less than 2 weeks. My entire life had been turned upside down. I'd lost my home, gained an ally in Aunt Bonnie, and somehow ended up in a strange new dynamic with my parents. Kate came out of the bedroom and sat at the edge of my makeshift bed. "Can't sleep?" I asked. She shook her head. "Too much going on in here?" She tapped her temple. "Lily, do you think I should give them another chance?" I sat up that your call. They're still our parents for better or worse. I'm scared they'll go back to how they were before she admitted. That they'll pressure me about the baby or treat you badly again. Probably I said, honestly, people don't change that easily. But now we have Aunt Bonnie, and we have each other. Kate smiled a little. We've always had each other. She paused and added, I think I want to keep the baby. Is that crazy? I reached out and squeezed her hand. Not crazy, scary, sure, but you'll be in. Amazing mom, better than ours, at least, Kate said with a bitter laugh. As we sat there in the dark, I realized something important. No matter what happened with our parents, whether they truly changed or just pretended to, Kate, and I would be okay. We had survived this far. We would keep surviving together. The journey ahead would be complicated. Kate's pregnancy, my uncertain living situation, our fractured relationship with our parents. But for the first time, I felt like we weren't facing it alone. The next morning, I woke up with a weird sense of hope mixed with doubt. Kate was curled up next to me on the pull-out couch, having fallen asleep there after a late-night talk. She looked peaceful, for once one hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach. I carefully got up without waking her and found Aunt Bonnie in the kitchen, making pancakes. Morning, she said, sliding a stack onto a plate for me. How'd you sleep? Okay, I guess, I said, dousing the pancakes. And syrup. Kate told me she wants to keep the baby. Aunt Bonnie nodded, not looking surprised. I figured she might. That girl's got a nurturing spirit always. As she sat down across from me, how do you feel about becoming an aunt? I hadn't really thought about it. That way, weird, good, weird, though we ate in comfortable silence. Until Kate shuffled in, hair sticking up in all directions. Aunt Bonnie wordlessly passed her a plate of pancakes, which she accepted gratefully. So what happens now? I asked after we'd all eaten. Now we figure out a game plan. Aunt Bonnie said Kate needs to finish school, you both need stability, and your parents need to prove they're serious about changing. Kate looked down at her empty plate. I should probably talk to Tyler too. He deserves to know what I'm deciding. That conversation happened later. That day Tyler came over looking terrified, probably expecting Aunt Bonnie to tear him a new one. Instead, she offered him lemonade and gave them privacy to talk in the bedroom while I pretended not to eavesdrop from the hallway. I couldn't hear everything, but Tyler's reaction surprised me. No arguing or denying responsibility. Instead, he kept saying stuff like, whatever you need, and I'll be there. When they came out an hour later, Kate looked relieved and Tyler looked determined. If still scared, I'll tell my parents tonight, he promised. Before leaving, they'll freak, but they're big on responsibility. They won't let me bail. After he left, Kate flopped down next to me on the couch. Well, that went better than expected. He seems decent. I admitted he, as Kate said, scared out his mind, but decent. The next couple days passed in the blur of planning. Aunt Bonnie called our parents for another meeting, this time with all of us plus Tyler, and his parents talked about awkward. Tyler's parents were shocked, but rallied quickly, especially his mom. My parents were stiff and formal, but at least they weren't yelling. The adults talk about practical stuff, medical insurance, living arrangements, school plans. I mostly sat quietly watching everyone's faces. My dad kept looking at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention, this weird mix of guilt and something else I couldn't identify. My mom barely made eye contact with anyone after that meeting. Our parents asked if we consider coming home for dinner. That weekend, a fresh start. My mom called it. Kate immediately looked at me, up to Lily. She said firmly, I go where she goes. My dad nodded slowly. Fair enough, I agreed. But only if Aunt Bonnie came too. No way was I walking back into that house without my backup. They reluctantly said yes. That Friday night was the most uncomfortable dinner of my life. My mom had clearly spent hours cooking all our favorite foods, even remembering mine correctly, which was a first. The conversation was strained, everyone trying too hard to be polite. Halfway through dinner, my dad cleared his throat. I've been doing some reading, he said awkwardly, about colorism and how it affects children. He looked directly at me. I never realized what I was doing to you, Lily. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just a chance to try to be better. I almost choked on my mashed potatoes. My dad reading about colorism, admitting he was wrong. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. My mom jumped in next. We've also found a family therapist. She said for all of us, if you girls are willing, we have a lot to work through. I looked at Kate, who raised her eyebrows like, what do you think? Maybe. I said cautiously, we'll think about it. After dinner, my dad awkwardly showed me my old room, except it wasn't my old room anymore. They completely redone it. New paint, new furniture, even a fancy desk for studying. It was nice, way nicer than what I'd had before. We thought, if you want to come back. He trailed off. I don't know yet. I said, honestly, this is all happening really fast. He nodded. I understand the room's yours whenever you want it. No pressure. That night back at Aunt Bonnie's, Kate and I stayed up late talking. She was torn about moving back home. On one hand, they were being surprisingly supportive about the baby. Now, on the other hand, we both knew how quickly they could flip. What do you think? She asked me. Should we give them another chance? I sighed. I don't know. Part of me wants to believe they've changed. Another part is waiting for them to go back to normal. Same, Kate admitted. But I also feel bad about taking advantage of Aunt Bonnie. Her apartment's tiny for 3 people, let alone 4 once the baby comes at. Was a good point. Aunt Bonnie had been amazing, but this wasn't a long-term solution. We decided to talk to Aunt Bonnie about it in the morning. When we brought it up over breakfast, she surprised us. I've actually been thinking about this, she said. I've been looking at 3-bedroom apartments, more space for all of us. You want us to stay with you permanently? Kate asked, sounding shocked. Aunt Bonnie shrugged. If that's what you want, or you could try going home with the understanding that my door is always open if things don't work out. We talked it through for hours. By the end, we had a plan, Kate and I would move back home on a trial basis. We'd attend family therapy. We'd spend weekends with Aunt Bonnie. And at the first sign of our parents reverting to their old ways, we'd be out of there moving back. It was weird. My parents were trying so hard. It was almost uncomfortable. My dad kept asking about my schoolwork. and offering to help my mom. Suddenly wanted to know about my friends and interests. They both fussed over Kate making sure she ate properly and got enough rest. Family therapy was even weirder. Our therapist, Dr. Chin, didn't let anyone get away with anything. When my dad tried to downplay some of the things he'd done, she called him out immediately. When my mom cried about how hard it was for her, Dr. Chin pointed out how much harder it had been for me to break through. Came about a month, and we were talking about birthdays. Specifically how they'd celebrated Kate's, but ignored mine. My mom started with her usual excuses about being busy or tight on money. That doesn't explain the pattern, Dr. Chin said calmly. Why was money always tight for Lily's birthday, but never for Kate's? My mom went silent. Then, to my complete shock, she turned to me with tears in her eyes. Because I'm racist, she said simply. I didn't want to admit it even to myself, but I treated you differently because you look more black, and that's unforgivable. The room went dead quiet. My dad looked like he'd been punched. Kate reached over and squeezed my hand. I don't know if it's unforgivable, I said finally, but it really messed me up. My mom nodded, tears streaming down her face. I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life try to make it right if you'll let me. It wasn't an instant fix. There were still awkward moments, still times when they'd slip into old habits, and I'd have to call them out. But that confession was the first time I believed they might actually be changing. Meanwhile, Kate's pregnancy was progressing. Her first ultrasound was a big deal. We all, when even Tyler, seeing that tiny blob on the screen, made everything more real. Kate cried. Tyler looked terrified, but held her hand the whole time. My parents stood awkwardly in the corner until the technician asked if they wanted to see their future grandchild. After that, my mom couldn't stop talking about baby stuff. By the time Kate was showing, our family had fallen into a new routine. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. My parents were trying. Consistently, I was cautiously letting them back, and Kate was glowing despite the morning sickness and swollen ankles. We still spent every other weekend with Aunt Bonnie. Those weekends became my favorite, just the three of us hanging out, watching movies, talking about everything, and nothing. Aunt Bonnie never pressured us about our parents. She just listened and offered advice. When asked one Saturday at Aunt Bonnie's, Kate grabbed her stomach suddenly while we were watching TV. My heart nearly stopped. Until she laughed. The baby's kicking, she exclaimed. Here, feel. She grabbed my hand and placed it on her rounded belly. Sure enough, I felt a little thump against my palm. It was the weirdest, coolest thing I'd ever experienced. Hey, in there, I said to Kate's stomach. I'm your Aunt Lily. Can't wait to meet you. Kate smiled so big I thought her face might split. I found out yesterday. She said, it's a girl and niece. I was going to have a niece. Something about that made everything more real. Have you thought about names? Aunt Bonnie asked. Kate nodded. I like Bonnie Lily Williams. She looked at us shyly. After my two favorite people, I didn't cry. I absolutely did not cry. Okay, maybe I cried a little. When we told our parents the baby's name, my mom actually hugged me, not a stiff formal hug, but a real one. She'll be lucky to have you as her aunt, she said softly. The months flew by. Kate finished her first semester at community college with decent grades despite everything. Tyler got a part-time job and saved every penny for the baby. My parents converted their home office into a nursery, painting it yellow because Kate didn't want